Don't like changing your password every 3 months? Well, the guy who invented that idea thinks it's kind of ridiculous as well. IT expert Bill Burr said that making people remember long, complicated passwords and changing them all the time drives them bananas. Nearly 15 years ago, Mr. Burr wrote guidelines for password security for the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology. It included suggestions that passwords should be changed every 3 months and be made up of a range of different characters. That document, by the way, led to stipulations for computer and online accounts that require people to abide by the rules. But he said that they don't actually work, and people still pick terrible passwords, but now they're just harder to remember. Much of what I did, I now regret, Mr. Burr told the Wall Street Journal. It just drives people bananas, and they don't pick good passwords no matter what you do. Many websites have taken up the rules requiring people to add various bizarre characters to their passwords or forcing them to include numbers as well as capital letters. In fact, some even tell you that they need to include special characters like a question mark, for instance. Most won't even let people use a password that doesn't include such complex and difficult to remember characters. Other more progressive companies like Google thankfully have relaxed those restrictions. Mr. Burr's comments echo those from British spy agency GCHQ, which had said that people should instead use easy passwords, and whose security chief even joked that they were impossible for spies to follow. Experts have been predicting the end of passwords and their replacement with other technology like biometrics, including the fingerprint sensor that made its way on the iPhone and Galaxy phones, and other handsets as well. But the long strings of forgettable letters have mostly persisted until those technologies become more widespread. Here is my suggestion. Use phrases. Anything you want, the longer the better. Now, the issue that I come up with this method, now some websites tell me that my password is too long. Many of you no doubt wonder on a regular basis why smartphone batteries aren't getting any better. The answer is simple, that they actually are getting better, but manufacturers choose to use that power to bump up specs rather than delivering improved battery life. Now, however, engineers over at the University of Washington have taken a very interesting leap into a totally different way of powering a phone. They're using basically Tesla technology. They've used commercial, off-the-shelf components to design a cell phone that can make and receive calls without a battery. An associate professor in the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the UW and co-author on a paper describing the technology said, "We've built what we believe is the first functioning cell phone that consumes almost zero power. Instead, the phone pulls power from its surrounding environment, either from ambient radio signals harvested by an antenna or ambient light collected by a solar cell the size of a grain of rice. The device consumes just 3.5 microwatts of power during use. To achieve the really low power consumption that you need to run a phone by harvesting energy from the environment, they had to fundamentally rethink how these devices are designed. The biggest step was eliminating the analog to digital converter. That's the device in your phone that turns your voice into data. And apparently it's a power hog. Instead, they took advantage of tiny vibrations that happen in a microphone when a person is talking into it, or a speaker when someone is listening. An antenna converts that motion into radio signals in a way that uses almost no power. The only downside is that the user has to press a button to switch between speaking and listening modes. Really a small thing, if you ask me. In testing, the team was able to make calls and even use Skype. Right now, the battery-free phone needs a custom base station to transmit and receive calls. But the team says that there's no reason why the technology couldn't be integrated into standard mobile network infrastructure. Imagine in the future that all cell towers or Wi-Fi routers could come with this base station technology embedded in it. And if every house has a Wi-Fi router in it, you could essentially get battery-free cell phone coverage everywhere in the world. And happening in this week's gaming news, a huge update for No Man's Sky. Finally, developer Hello Games just released Atlas Rises, the third major update for the space exploration game on the PS4 and Windows. Coming just 367 days after launch, Atlas Rises sounds like the game's biggest expansion yet. Significant new elements include a preliminary implementation, we'll call it, of multiplayer features, 30 hours of story content alongside a revamped quest system, the ability to edit terrain, and even an overhauled galactic economy. This update marks the one-year anniversary of No Man's Sky, and a lot has changed, said Hello Games. This is the next step on our journey. As with the two previous expansions to No Man's Sky, the Atlas Rises update is full of changes and fixes based on community feedback. No Man's Sky players have long been asking for features such as the ability to salvage crashed freighters, fly close to planets' surfaces, and land a ship without being automatically ejected from the cockpit. And you can now do all of those things. Hello Games' willingness to adapt to its fans' desires is noteworthy, particularly because some of its post-launch changes to No Man's Sky seem to actually contradict the studio's original vision for a, quote, chill game. At launch, the game was a relatively directionless experience. It soon became clear that the majority of players wanted more structure, or at least more activities. And Hello Games has responded in Atlas Rises with a new story. Hello Games is promising double the lore and interaction of the existing game. The studio has implemented a proper quest system along with new features to support it, such as a communicator inside your ship that allows you to interact with characters even when you're on the go. The Atlas Rises update finally introduces a form of multiplayer action, a feature that has been perhaps the most controversial omission from No Man's Sky. If you see glowing orbs floating near you, that means that other people are in your vicinity. You can communicate with each other using proximity-based voice chat, and that's pretty much it. Although it sounds like there isn't much else to do besides explore together. The game currently supports as many as 16 players in the setup, while interaction with others is currently very limited. This is quite an important step into the world of synchronous co-op within No Man's Sky.